and that's when he went mute. You would call him and he would just stare at you. You would call him and he would just, rather not even stare at you, but he would just focus on TV or on something else until you shout or tap him. That's when he would realize that someone is calling him and he would look at you. He stopped pointing. He stopped doing all things that relate to communication or language development, I may say. That is where I started getting worried. His peers were 2 years, they were already talking. He was here 2 years as well, but he couldn't even say a single word. That is when reality kicked in. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Yeah, so today I just wanted to talk about something that most of you may not know about me. But 2 years ago, that was in 2024, around the month of May, I decided to lay down my tools at work and stay home and take care of my son. Some people would look at this and say that was a bad move. Yeah, to some extent, maybe they are right. But to me, at that point, my child was more important than any job that anyone would present me. So, how I came to this decision, my son was allegedly diagnosed with autism, which is mild, that is level 1. He was very okay, but when he reached the point of speaking, he failed to meet that milestone, whereas his peers were thriving and talking, making sentences, communicating. For him, he just went mute. And yet, before he was mentioning words, making 2-sentence words, mommy come, see bird, mommy bird, as in a bird flying in the air. But then all of a sudden he went mute. Now when I was on my maternity leave, my son was doing so well. By the time I went back to work, maternity leave at my workplace was 6 months. And I added with my annual leave, so I was home for almost 8 months. By the time I went back to work, he was literally walking, and he had started walking and mentioning a few words, as I say. But then all of a sudden, he got a setback. Now, mind you, I was leaving him with nannies. In Uganda, we call them housemaids. And when I came to realize, my son was literally being fed screen time for almost the entire day so that the maid can do other housework. Which it wasn't a bad thing. I wouldn't blame her because she needed to do her housework. But the child was more important, and the reason as to why I chose to bring a maid or a nanny to take care of him was basically, to take care of the home was basically for the boy. So he was fed cocoa melon from the time I left. Whenever I would wake up to go to work, the TV would go on with cocoa melon the entire day. Whenever he would cry, instead of playing with him, they would put cocoa melon to silence him. So my son literally spent like 6 months on cocoa melon, and that's when cocoa melon and of course other cartoons, and that's when he went mute. You would call him and he would just stare at you. You would call him and he would just, rather not even stare at you, but he would just focus on TV or on something else until you shout or tap him. That's when he would realize that someone is calling him and he would look at you. He stopped pointing. He stopped doing all things that relate to communication or language development, I may say. That is where I started getting worried. His peers were 2 years, they were already talking. He was here 2 years as well, but he couldn't even say a single word. That is when reality kicked in. I didn't know anything about autism. And then that's when the father mentioned it, because he had no eye contact, he couldn't point at anything, he couldn't clap. So the father suggested that I go and seek for help so that they can examine him. So I took him to a children's clinic, a children's hospital, and we met a pediatrician who is really good with children and diagnosed him with mild autism. Of course, after giving me, there's a checklist you're supposed to answer questions in it, and then depending on the results, they rate the child. So he was diagnosed with autism level 1. I didn't know anything about autism. I got scared. I literally cried. But she told me that it's manageable and early intervention is very important. She recommended speech therapy, recommended occupational therapy. I had no money. My salary was very small. The father's salary equally couldn't sustain us that well. But guess what? That is where the journey started. I embraced myself, told myself, let me work and see where this goes. So in 2024, my son was 2 years and rather 3 years. 3 years and I think 2 months, still with no speech at all, no words. So I decided, let me give this job 1 more year and see what happens. I gave it my best. I worked so hard. It was actually one of the best years in the 7 years I'd worked for the company. My results were good. Everyone recognized me. I was promised salary increment, a good bonus. But when the time for bonus came, I earned even less than the previous years. And my salary was increased by less than 2%. So I asked myself, I am literally struggling, because I was earning a salary, but the month would end and I have debts. I have debts all over. So when my salary would come in, I would pick again, clear the debts, and then borrow again. So I was in a circle of debts, borrowing all the time. So I sat down and told myself, but what is this? What is happening? My child needs me, mind you. He's lagging behind, he's actually deteriorating. His communication has gone from +1 to negative, actually from 0 to negative. So when the bonus came, I actually told myself, like a month to bonus, I told myself, if the bonus comes and I get less than this amount and my salary is increased by less than this percentage, I am resigning with no debate around it. So when the day of bonus came, that happened as expected. My expectations were not met. I put in my resignation. Besides that, I had a course that was waiting for me to be done. And with the nature of work I was doing, I couldn't get enough time to sit and watch and take care of my son, do the job, go to school. So I had to make a decision, because my salary was literally for transporting me to work and pay debts. So I told myself, if I sat and finished my course and looked after my son, maybe, who knows, in the future I may get something better, my son may improve, and life will change. So I resigned in 2024 around the month of May. So it's been 2 years and I think 2 months. Yeah, it hasn't been easy, but we've survived until to date. Why am I telling this story? I'm telling this story for people to understand that at times people make choices that others may question, but you don't know their true story. So from all this, when I started focusing on taking care of my son, introduced him to speech therapy, I enrolled him in school that provides the therapy, both speech and occupational, for about 1 year and two terms. Yeah, so he studied there for 5 terms. When I realized that, yes, the improvement was there, especially in the occupational area. He potty training was perfect. He had improved. He would not pee on himself. We stopped using diapers. I decided that I think I have to go to the next step now, because I had a plan. After I actually needed him to be in that school for 2 years. Then after the second year, I need to chip in and put him in a mainstream school. But the improvement wasn't, yes, the improvement was there, but not so noticeable. Like the boy was literally opening up to me more than the school. So by the time he opens up at school, I have already experienced all those things with him. So, mind you, the fees and therapy charges kept going up. I'm not working. I'm relying on the father to take care of us 100%. It reached a time where I was literally choked. I was dying of debts to make sure that the boy is in school, therapy is paid for, transportation, because the school was far from home. So I made a bold decision again. Third term of 2025, I decided I'm going to homeschool this boy. I'm going to do the therapy so that I could clear the debts and have something to survive on, because the boy needed a diet, which I couldn't afford because therapy and fees were taking almost everything. Yeah, so I homeschooled him in 2025, third term, for 3 months. When I did that, my son opened up. He started writing. Remember, at school they were teaching him to write on a whiteboard using a marker. I stopped that. I bought a book and we started writing. We started with the alphabet, the vowels, the numbers. And trust me, by the end of the third term, when kids were coming home for the Christmas holidays, my son had really learned a lot. So I kept sharing this progress with the therapists, and they were amazed at the progress. So at times, when you're facing some challenges as an individual, you may need to make decisions that are really tough in life, that may impact you tremendously, but also focusing on achieving something really important. In my case, I had to let go of my job to take care of my son. And yeah, as a testimony, today my son is in a mainstream school. He's doing so well. He writes, he speaks. I will put a few clips of him. I will attach a few clips of him in the different levels of development, where he started writing, where he started making words, he plays, he knows, he calls people by name, he calls me mommy, calls the father daddy, calls the sister, knows his friends' names. So I'm telling this story to encourage parents out there, especially if you have a child who has been diagnosed with any condition, whether autism, regardless of the level, whether level 1, 2, or 3, the mild, moderate, and severe, or maybe the child has cerebral palsy. As a parent, especially as mothers, you may have to learn some of these things. For in my case, I reached a point whereby I couldn't afford therapy. But I couldn't let my son just sit there and slide back to where he was. No, I took the initiative. I started reading a lot about the condition. I started reading a lot about speech therapy. I started following parents who have children with the same condition. Of course, my son was mild. Actually, if you look at him, you may not even think that he was once diagnosed with mild autism. In fact, at times, I feel like maybe it was a misdiagnosis. I don't know. But yeah, I'm telling you this today, that my son is doing so well at school. He knows numbers. His favorite area is actually numbers. He can identify colors. He's now 5 years. He can identify colors. He speaks. He calls his teachers by name. He recalls his friends. He plays. Like he has started communicating, whereby he starts the communication without you prompting him as before. He points at things. His eye contact is perfect. So if you have a child with autism, cerebral palsy, all these conditions that are usually tagged on children or children are diagnosed with, don't give up. But you as a parent, you play a very big role, because your child will always open up to you first before therapists and everything. If you can afford therapy, yes, go for it, but do not leave everything to the therapists. Be part of the growth. Be part of the therapy. Read things. Learn. Go online. Read. These days, information is everywhere. You can share. You can learn from parents who have gone through the same situation. And with time, your child will thrive. I'm glad that mine was diagnosed with just mild therapy. I mean mild autism, that is level 1. When you look at him now, he doesn't look like a child who was even diagnosed with mild autism. Because he feeds himself, as I said, he has started communicating, whereby you don't prompt him to say something. Of course, he started by hand leading. From hand leading, he started pointing. He would pull you and point at something. But right now, he actually tells me, "Mommy, I want bread." And then I look at him, I'm like, oh my goodness, God, I give you the glory. Or he can say, "Mommy," if we are walking, it's like, "Mommy, pass here." Then he will point, but also telling you what to do. He instructs. He can tell you, "Mommy, sit on a chair." Maybe you're eating and he sees you're walking while moving towards the chair or the dining area, or you're carrying a plate of food. You'll be like, "Mommy, sit on a chair, eat food, drink tea, drink porridge." This is someone who had no words. The time I got him out of school, he would call things like, instead of saying banana, he would say nanana. But right now he says banana. He knows so many things. If he hears a bird chirping, he'll be like, "Mommy, bird chirping, a bird chirping." Like his vocabulary has improved. So don't give up on your child. However, give them time. They usually open up to us, the parents, before even the therapists. So this is my story for today. I hope someone learns from it, 1 or 2 things, and it educates you, especially if you have a child or children with special conditions. I hope you learn from this, and give a comment in the comment section. Let's share ideas. What have you done if you're a parent who has a child with autism? How far are you guys? What have you done? What are you doing right now to see that your child gets better? And yeah, we'll be talking more of these topics in the future videos, so stick around. Please subscribe to this channel. It helps me, it motivates me rather, to do more content as such, and also encourages me to share my stories with the world, so that someone out there can learn and be encouraged as well. So thank you for today, and see you in the next one. Bye for now.